welcome to another edition of Taking Stock Live, where we do just that. We take stock with really thought leaders, inspiration, and people who I love to follow, and I know you all love to follow all over the world. And today's going to be super fun. This is someone who was brought to me by my team. Her name is Nina Holdaway. She is the managing director of Accenture Interactive. And as I was looking at Nina's background, I thought, wow, there couldn't be a more relevant person for me to learn from and for all of you to listen to than what we're going to hear about today. So I'll tell you a little bit about Nina, and then I know we'll hear directly from her. So over 25 years of developing, managing, and marketing leading global, regional, and local brands. So Nina, you started out with Unilever in Sweden and the Nordic region in the 90s. Later on, worked at the headquarters for Unilever in Rotterdam. And you set up one of its first innovation centers for spreads and the cooking category. Then you moved over to Kraft Heinz, or Kraft, I guess it was at the time maybe, and the UK, continuing your marketing journey. And you had the opportunity to sharpen your commercial edge by taking on broader commercial and cross-functional capabilities. Then you moved over to the client side. So you and I will have a lot to talk about what it's like to go from brands to different sides of looking and working with brands, and started really in the consultancy world. And then found yourself at Accenture. Now you've impressive for all of those of you who don't know, being a managing director at Accenture is a big deal. And you've been there for about 5 years and really been focusing on the frontline CMO work and really particularly marketing and relationships and partnerships, I should say, within marketing. Is that a decent summary of your background?
That's a very good summary, Shelley, of the 25 odd years it's been, and it's been an absolute pleasure throughout client side and consultancy alike. So yeah, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, it's an incredible background, and like I said, I think there's a lot to be learned, even just as you migrate in your own career from being sort of client side to then being part of the consultancies or the technology providers that serve those clients. But just looking at your background, you obviously have a passion for CMO and for brands. And I'm curious if you could just share with our audience first, where do you think that passion comes from?
So yeah, that's a good question, and probably something, I've thought about myself over the years, given it's been a very consistent theme. So the first thing I think that lies behind that passion is definitely my passion for fellow human beings. So I have always been fascinated by people, and at university I did business degree, but quite early on I started flirting with psychology and did a couple of extra courses, really getting to understand human beings and to get under the skin of their desires and their needs and their sort of inner motivations. And I guess related to that, then, once you thoroughly understand your consumer or your customer and the people around you, that's when I think you can do some fantastic things with brands. You can create the most amazing, brand experiences or consumer and customer experiences. And I think relatively early on, actually, in my career, when I was with Unilever, I had a taste of that. So I worked in the margarine area, and most people think margarine, it's only so exciting as a product. But what I had a pleasure in my first sort of brand management role to take on was the heritage of a brand that had been around in the Swedish market then for many years, that was very much associated with cooking and was positioned as the helper in the kitchen. So very early on, it was all about actually what can we do with our brand and what experiences can we provide. And we did things like developing cookbooks, and we launched those books, and we provided services around, we did cooking events and provided services around actually helping people succeed with a dinner party, etc. So, and that was very early on, the first few years of my marketing career. And that's always stayed with me. And in 2022, when experiences is, very widely, that's the focus for many brands. I think that still holds true. So yeah, I'm very passionate. Could talk on the topic for a very long time. Absolutely love the world of brand and CMOs.
I love that. And I love where you started, which is just, it starts with your curiosity about people. I was someone who always liked to look at people, shopping carts or baskets in the supermarket. I don't know why, maybe I'm nosy, yep. But I think that somehow that's in you. And then it's like, how do you extend that out to the products that you work on? And like having a cookbook, to help with dinner parties, like I know that's something I could still really use. So it's wonderful to put those sort of that curiosity put to work in that way.
And I think you're spot on, Shelley. I think if you're going to be good as a marketeer, that closeness to your customer or consumer is so critical. So being with them, which we did a very good job of, I think, in Unilever, shopping with them, cooking with them, and being in their homes, opening their cupboards to see what's really going on, often on the back of perhaps having had a conversation with them beforehand that might have pointed you in a slightly different direction. It's just absolutely fascinating. So with a curious mind and an interest in people, I think that sort of leads you down a certain path. And I've been very happy there for many years.
It is. You're reminding me of sort of when we used to do sort of shop-alongs and closet studies. And we'd say, don't clean up for us. We want to actually see how you live. But it's just so much fun to kind of get to see people in their natural element.
Absolutely brilliant.
So now, I mean, obviously the agenda for a CMO today, it is not an easy world out there with, technology and data, and in some ways, maybe the tooling has gotten better, but I'm sure you're hearing a lot in terms of what's on their mind. So maybe you share just some of those top themes that you're hearing from marketeers and CMOs as you're talking to them.
We hear a lot, and again, in the same way as if you manage and develop a brand, you want to be close to your consumers. In the same way, we need to be close to our clients and our CMOs. And one of the things that happened, if we dial back a couple of years at the start of the pandemic, was that my colleagues and I found ourselves with a hotline pretty much, just as COVID hit, people were feeling really unsure and uncertain about what was going on. Actually, what was, they had lots in their personal lives that was shifting and changing, lots at work, not really sure how to move forward necessarily. So there was a lot of conversation, and quite quickly, what we realized there was a need for was for people to come together to make sense of things, to come together and, safety in numbers, to share ideas, to, in amongst everything that was difficult, inspire one another, to, have someone else saying, oh, that's really interesting. That happened to me last week. And, here is what we did. What do you think? So we created and brought together both current clients and other people in our networks, CMOs specifically, in a CMO community that's been running for the last couple of years now. And it was, in terms of, back to your questions around topics, what we found was that early on in the pandemic, there was so much going on that actually what was topical shifted by the week, if not by the day. So it was impossible for us to actually plan topics ahead of time. It had to be done in the last few days before the actual sessions that we ran. And then, of course, what's happened is that, there are probably now about 100 or so CMOs in the UK that belong to that community. We are still meeting every 3 to 4 weeks, and a lot of them have, found their own ways of having conversations with each other. So we're not always part of that. And of course, the topics have become more consistent. There isn't, as much change and and perhaps turbulence as we had early on. Things that we are hearing, right now that people are asking about is, we talked about experiences. So a lot of discussion around, how do I stay relevant? How do I make sure my brand and my company is relevant at a time when, consumers, customers are changing so much and so quickly. So actually, getting under the skin of that topic and then helping, our clients create those experiences and being quite agile in terms of how that can shift and change over time is a huge topic of conversation. Another one would be purpose. So I think that's something that's been part of the conversation. It feels like a very long time. If you look again back to Unilever, an organization like Unilever, they have done a lot of work for their brands around purpose for many years. However, I think now it's widely recognized that you can't actually function without a very clear purpose that is meaningful, that is not just gimmicky, and that is also underpinned by, values where people like you or I, if we wanted to join an organization, we could paint ourselves into that picture and feel that actually what I'm going to be contributing here is well aligned with who I am, what I'm all about, and what I want to bring to the world. So I think that's another huge topic of conversations, and we've run many sessions around that. And then back to what you were saying, the tech and the tooling. So yes, as a CMO, you fully recognize that there is a huge amount that you need to know about technology. But do this world that we live in, do we always get it fully? I think that probably the answer, we've come a long way, but the answer is still no. So again, we're trying to host some helpful sessions where they can have those conversations with each other and where they can check in terms of, data and analytics and different things that they need to be put in place to be able to run with an operating model that is more appropriate for 2022 than perhaps it was, in even early 2000s. So a lot around, the whole tech landscape as well, that we're trying to bring to this community, and that it is a community by CMOs and for CMOs. And I love that. So it's all guided by, what is it that they want to talk about, what's on their minds, and it's lots of story sharing. And the more they get to know each other, the more it's sort of open and honest and saying it the way it is. It's by no means all the shiny, glossy success stories. It's a lot of, and we try this and we went down this way and it didn't work, and actually here is how we thought differently about it. So it's been absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant. But those are some of the topics that we're talking about, but there are many more as well that go beyond.
I mean, I love what you said for a lot of different reasons, but even just sort of the mental model of going from, 100 topics early in the pandemic to now maybe more like of sort of the ones that, you might anticipate, but that one of the kind of real benefits is actually not knowing exactly what the agenda is going to be, but creating that community where people could sort of be in a gray area together.